Welcome to Tampa Home Talk with your host, native Tampa real estate girl, Katrina Madewell, a full-time, passionate, out-of-the-box thinker, love for home ownership kind of realtor with over 21 years of combined mortgage and real estate experience. Tune in every week at this time for expert advice on everything you need to know about home ownership, finance, maintaining great credit, building wealth, and making your everyday life better, and how you can be financially successful today and tomorrow. Remember, love where you live or let Katrina fix it. Now, here's your host of Tampa Home Talk, Katrina Madewell.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for rejoining us this afternoon for Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell with Charles Rudenberg Realty, and you're listening to us on the Real Estate Radio Network. You can catch us here every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. And very, very excited to have a fantastic guest today for our show. Kelli, and please correct me if I get your name wrong because you got a toughie, but I think I'm going to get it right because I've been practicing. Kelli Ogboke?
Yes, very good.
I have it right. Okay, fantastic. So the name of her company is Kelli Ogboke Design Management. And I'm looking at her cards. They're so intriguing. You could literally stare at them. We were talking about the Moo cards before we started the show and how they literally like the name you used?
Portfolio in the pocket.
Portfolio in the pocket. Yeah. So she's showing me a whole bunch. I've got 5 or 6 cards in front of me with before and after projects, which are fabulous. I'm going to have to scan these in and put them on our website at tampahometalk.com. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at Tampa Home Talk. So we will have to post what I'm looking at so that you can see. And if you have to get in and out of the car today, please join us for the show in its entirety because we stick every single one of them on a podcast after the fact. And you'll want to hear all about today's show because it's about current design trends and project management. And you guys do a little bit of like residential, commercial. You do a whole bunch of stuff. So we'll share, of course, towards the end of the show on some stories and different things that you guys do. But we'll talk in detail about some of the things. And your background is awesome. So I'm going to have you share with that too. So will you introduce yourself to the person listening and then talk about how you got started and why you do what you do?
Okay, well, yes, like you said, my name is Kelli Ogboke, and the company is Kelli Ogboke Design Management. We're a small women-owned business, and we do interior design, architecture, project management, everything from residential to commercial, very small to very, very big. And I've been interested in interior design and architecture as long as I can remember. My mom has photos of me drawing floor plans and, as soon as I could pick up a pencil. So it's definitely a passion of mine. I went to school at University of Florida for architecture and interior design.
Oh, you're a Gator. I already like you.
Yes, go Gators.
So what's your degree is in?
It's a Bachelor of Design, specialism in interior design. And then I did my master's in industrial design at Scuola Politecnica di Design in Milan. And
that was fun, I bet.
Yes, it was very interesting. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I did it.
What kind of stuff did you do in Milan?
Well, I had to learn Italian because my master's was taught in Italian. And
interesting.
Yeah. So, and it was funny because the year after I graduated, they switched everything over to English. But
they did.
Exactly. They were big on this tradition of teaching design school in Italian. So it was a very Italian thing to do, is to be very, very proud of the heritage, and it was a great experience.
I guess the good part that comes out of that is you probably still speak Italian.
I'm very rusty,
but enough to probably have a conversation.
Yeah, I could have a conversation. Please don't ask me to say anything
right.
on the air right now.
I promise we won't.
That would be really, really cruel.
You could say it was Italian anyway, and I wouldn't know, so it's all good.
Somebody will know. But it did force me to learn, which allowed me to get my first real design job in Milan because I was able to speak after I graduated, and did boutique design and furniture design, which is like a dream come true to do in Milan because it's like a mecca for European design, especially in furniture. And from there, I moved on and went to a job in London and did very similar boutique design and some furniture. Met my husband, who's from Scotland, and we got married and we moved to Dublin, Ireland, and that's where I designed primarily schools and learning environments. And then last year came back here to my hometown, Tampa, and just started building that business and using all that experience.
What a great experience for you when you were younger, I'm sure, to go do your internship in another country and just have that design and everything that comes with it. And you have your master's, right?
Yes.
Yes. That's amazing. It's so much, I'm sure, that goes into that. So you said your full service design and build out and a little bit of everything.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the cards, but I would like to describe to the person listening what a little bit of everything is. So like this one I'm looking at, let's look at maybe it was a kitchen with a big breakfast bar or table in the middle, and then you guys have you revamped this to make it more of an entertainment space?
Well, that's actually a kitchen in a office.
Gotcha.
So that is the break room lounge. It was a large warehouse in the West Shore district that 10,000 square feet, and we renovated and turned it into a Class A office space. And what you don't see in the picture is the gymnasium and the TVs and the pool tables there and kitchen and all that kind of thing. So it's really creating an environment for the people who work there and making it, have those extra benefits, so you can get a benefits package when you work at a job. But if you actually work in a place that's super fun and has all these extra things, it has like a popcorn machine and there's movies.
Yes.
And,
there's a lot of big companies that are kind of going that way, like Yelp, and there's many different like modern trendy type companies that are all about making the environment different, because that's what's going to keep your great employees around for a long time.
Yeah. And makes there's something about making you feel like you're valued too, as an employee. And the same thing that goes across to retail design and, how you make somebody feel when they walk into your shop and wanting to stay there, and even into school design as well. So making you feel good about being in school and wanting to hang around. And, even into, we're doing a big project for a church at the moment. So, and it's a very like alternative type of design for the church and the church lobby. And there's a big, emphasis on creating, these lobby spaces of gathering and making it feel good. And so you get there and you just want to hang out and create a community and be a place for people to gather. And that just goes, even into residential,
Correct.
To create those spaces where you gather. And
I'm looking at your cards, and I know that they all have a story. Like, there's a couple that are empty office buildings and stuff, but this one, I'm looking at it, and I can tell it's a commercial space. But I'm gonna equate this to a house I had one time. It was probably not a whole lot smaller. It was about 5,000 square feet, and it looked like a big box. And that's kind of what this place looks like. And I can tell it's a commercial business. I don't know what type of business it is, but it looks like something you'd see in an industrial type area. Portalet, limpy looking little palm trees, like the sidewalk needs to be pressure washed. These are your before pictures. So then I'm looking at your after pictures, and you've got paint, you've got nice color, you've got this awesome landscape, and it's just, I'm looking at the design. So part of what you do goes into making this thing, which I'm going to post at TampaHomeTalk.com, turn into this thing with the blue and the gray on the bottom. So talk about this project, because that looks like it was a lot of fun and probably not real expensive, right? But the difference, I don't know what kind of business was this? It was,
this is the ironic part. It was a warehouse that stored copy machines and printers, and it was bought and rehabilitated by a company that does paperless office. So they essentially eliminate the use of copies and printers and do everything.
Very ironic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, like the one before, doesn't look like any place I'd want to go by myself.
No, it was very run down. It was essentially just a shell warehouse, a poor job built out in some of the offices in there. So we just gutted everything. Blew out lots of windows all around it. And what you don't see in that picture is a large skylight on the roof. So there's a huge skylight. So there's an atrium in the center.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Sweet.
it's actually, you can see it in one of those photos there.
Oh, it's the same place. I didn't realize. I thought it was different.
Yep, no, it's the same space. So you can see the, just opening it up, adding the extra light, and just making it a more humane, as we call it, type of space. And
well, the motto,
like a jail.
Yes, I agree. I would have to agree with that. The motto here at Tampa Home Talk, and part of why we do what we do is because we want people to love where they live, and if they don't love where they live, we want to fix it. And
absolutely.
So, for example, you can fix it if they want to stay in their house. I can fix it if they don't.
They want to leave. Absolutely. There you go. So that's the love it or list it thing, right? The love to list it.
Very much so. So, but it's interesting because sometimes you might have people that absolutely love their space. I mean, I sold this property that was probably about 8,000 square feet, block off Bayshore, fabulous home, but totally 1970s contemporary box, horrible, like need a lot of your help kind of design. But it's just interesting to see what you do, and I love these cards. I mean, I'm sure you have more that you can help us post on our website.
Yes,
Tampa Home Talk.
absolutely. I've got more before and afters.
So we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we are going to further talking about some of the things you do with regards to commercial, residential, changing that space, and then we're going to get into some of the design aspects and the current trends into some of the things that you go through. So my guest today is Kelli Ogboke.
Yep.
I got it right. This is Katrina Madewell, and I'm with Charles Ruttenberg Realty. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk on the Real Estate Radio Network. We're going to be back in just a minute, so stick around because you'll love what we have coming up next. Back in a minute. Welcome back. This is Katrina Madewell, your host, and you're listening to Tampa Home Talk on the Real Estate Radio Network. Very excited about our guest today in studio, Kelli Ogboke. And the beginning part of the show, if you missed it, you're really going to want to catch it in its entirety, because the beginning part of the show, we talked about some of the things that, like, for example, we were just sharing on your cards and the different spaces that you've done and how you changed the design and the feel and the love and just, that whole sense of community. So if you missed the earlier part of the show, get it on tampahometalk.com. You can also catch us on a podcast, and we are on Facebook and Twitter at Tampa Home Talk. You can also catch us on our off-air number, where we'd love to connect you with our guest of this show or anybody that we've had on our show in the past. And that number is 813-377-2775. And you can call us or text us on our off-air number here at Tampa Home Talk, 813-377-2775. So let's chime into our next part. And I know that, the theme and the idea and the topic and the flow of today's show is going to be current design trends and project management, which obviously the project management is the hands-on, like everything has to happen after you figure out what you're going to do, right? But the beginning part of that's going to be the design part of it, which is probably the most fun.
Yeah, I enjoy most of the process, but I think probably the most fun is the schematics. It's really, throwing out the big design ideas, trying to kind of push clients to see how much do we want to step out of the box? Where do we really want to go? How creative can we really get? And that's the part that really excites me, and that's probably where I have the most fun.
Where does your process start with your clients?
It starts with the conversation. It's just getting to know them. I mean, you can spend several hours just sitting, talking about, if it's residential, you're talking about how they live their life, what's their routine, things that they, the lifestyle, because you're creating a space where they will live. And so it's very, it's very personal, and you understand that. Walk
me through like a conversation that you would have with somebody using the residential example that you just shared on. If you had somebody, they said, Kelli, I don't like this space. Like, I don't know what it is. It's a great space. The lighting's good. And we probably should love this space because it's the hub of the home. Maybe it's the middle where the kitchen is or whatever.
Right.
Take me through how that looks. Like, what is that conversation like? What does it sound like?
Right. And that definitely, the example you just gave is, it happens all the time. Someone will be like, oh, well, this is, this kitchen has granite and has fairly new cabinetry, and it's this and it's that, and I should really want to keep it, and I feel kind of, like silly for wanting to change it, but I'm like, okay, so let's talk about it, and you end up realizing that it's how they're using the space too, or it just doesn't work for them. Maybe it was designed for somebody, who had a lot more of this type of cookware or didn't have that type of cookware, or, as far as the organization and the flow, and if it was designed for, maybe a retired couple, but now you're in there with 5 kids, your flow is going to be very, very different. Your storage needs are different. Your daily routine is so different. So things that worked for somebody, you're trying to retrofit into. And sometimes that works and sometimes it works for people. But in this case, it's just something's off and you don't like it. And just because you've got granite doesn't mean you need to stay with granite, and doesn't mean that because it may have cost someone, who had the house before a lot of money to put it in, doesn't mean you have to feel bad about wanting to change it either, So it's
happens. I mean, I had a home once and it was stunning, like really striking. But I knew already when I took that listing, and I was very honest. They were longtime clients of mine anyway, so I could be brutally honest, and that's why they love me. But the house, they redid the kitchen. It was like an espresso black color almost kitchen, which was nice. There's nothing wrong with the cabinets. Everything else was fine. It was beautiful. But the countertops that they chose in the kitchen were a red quartz, a little bit of sparkle. Beautiful. I could show you a picture. You'd be like, wow, this is awesome. But it's not for everybody.
Exactly.
And so what you mentioned was, sometimes people are like, oh, I feel really bad about getting rid of this. But it's just not me, or it doesn't fit, or I don't want to hang out in this kitchen, or I can't eat when I'm here, or whatever. Whatever it is. Do you ever repurpose any of that stuff that was really expensive? Do you ever reuse that anywhere else? Or
Well, we have a few vendors that may buy it back from us or salvage it. And so maybe they'll, demo it or take it out for free, but then they end up turning it around and sell. I mean, if it's something that can be repurposed, like we took out some stained glass windows. I mean, we can you reuse those. We can, find a new place for them or something like that. But as far as a countertop, it usually breaks when you pull it out.
Gotcha.
They've got to.
Some of that stuff you really can't repurpose in another area.
You try, and depending on how much time you have to get creative and come up with something else. I mean, you could break the countertop down and use it as a mosaic, and
right. That's what I was thinking.
Do something in the garden, and kind of create one of the like little stepping stones out of something like that. And if the
red quartz in the garden might be gorgeous.
Yeah, exactly. It also depends on the client. Some really get into that, and some just don't want to have anything to do with it. Just get it out. I never want to see it again.
That makes sense to me. So, what are some of the current design trends that you're seeing? Because I noticed you mentioned 3 things before the show.
Yes.
Can you talk about what those are and what each one of those mean?
Right. Well, the one that I think I get asked the most about it's not necessarily that the clients know what to call it, but when they start to describe it, it really comes down to it's like a tropical modern. And so essentially what that is it's very, clean lines and neutral colors. But so it's not sleek modern, contemporary, but it's not, super ornate and traditional. It's kind of like I guess that sleek modern meets the coastal textures. So you have the limestone and the travertine and some of the warm woods and kind
of a blend, maybe.
Yeah, it's a blend. It's a fusion, and it can kind of call on some Hawaiian influence.
Is that where the tropical name comes from?
Yeah,
okay.
So you can kind of get some of that I guess the coastal feel meets that tropical, so it's still
water,
very casual.
Palm trees, not so much hibiscus.
Exactly. Yeah. So more like palms and limestone and kind of some travertine and some white and just warm woods and things like that. Very light, muted colors that contrast with some warm woods, and like wood on the ceiling. It was like cypress or cedar on the ceiling, and maybe stone on the floor. So it's kind of like a reverse. Instead of having like the hardwood on the floor, you've got now the warm woods on the ceiling, and the floor is stone and that type of thing. So it's kind of a play on textures, really, and that happens a lot, I think, in Tampa with new construction. So new construction residential. That's where it's going, because people want something that's more modern and less cookie cutter, but they still need it to work in a beach coastal environment.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
it will just look strange. I mean, if you're on the water or block off the beach,
you're not going to be in a brick
house. You shouldn't have a log cabin, a block off the beach. That kind of thing.
Right.
Not that you would see it, but I'm just being funny.
Right.
My quirky little sense of humor. So, and then what's the next other thing that you're seeing a lot?
Well, as far as like for residential, for renovations, a lot of what we call transitional. And so transitional is a blend, again, of modern meets traditional. And so you have kind of a mix of old and new.
Is that like the shabby chic sort of? Or off? Am I way off? If I'm way off, you can say I'm way off.
There could be some shabby chic elements in a transitional space, but it wouldn't all be shabby chic.
Gotcha.
You know, there might be like a few accessories that are that way, or you might have a random hutch that's a shabby chic, but it's met with more modern, contemporary looking fixtures or something. You know what I mean? So it's kind of this blend. I just did a kitchen that I would call transitional. It has it's two-tone kitchen, so it has like a espresso base cabinets with like a slab, so they're just like a flat front, so it's very smooth and it's very modern in that sense.
So back to the 90s sort of look. Is it where they're not raised panel?
They're not raised panel. No, they're not. They're just like a slab. So they're just like a complete like smooth surface, but it's really dark wood, so you almost don't even see the seam between the drawers.
Gotcha.
And then it has, a white quartz, and then it which meets upper cabinets, which are white shaker style. So they have that. And as I'm describing, you're probably thinking, what are you doing? But it is beautiful together because it brings the old and the new, and it's kind of that, it really embodies the transitional feel. So it works in an older home. And then when I say older, not like a Hyde Park. It works
like
in
50s.
Even an 80s home.
Okay.
So Arthur Ruttenberg, to be example. And that
right.
it is an Arthur Ruttenberg 80s home that it's going into. And so it has, kind of that 80s style, very, a traditional split plan house. And, so we had to take out soffits and, fluorescent fixtures and bring the ceiling up and that kind of thing. So that type of thing still works in there because it modernizes it with the clean lines, but it still keeps some of that texture so it doesn't feel awkward. I mean, you couldn't put an Italian kitchen,
right.
super modern kitchen in an Arthur Ruttenberg home. It would feel really silly, so you'd have to kind of ease it in there, and it actually just works beautifully.
Yeah, it makes sense. I would love to post that picture so that you can, the person listening can see what that looks like.
Exactly.
And you're listening to Tampa Home Talk, and so our site is tampahometalk.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. In case you want to catch up with our guest today, Kelli Ogboke. Mm-hmm. I have your name so right. You can catch us on our off-air number and just call us or text us. We're more than happy to connect you with our guest today or any of our guests. And that number is 813-377-2775. Again, 813-377-2775. So we'll be back in just a minute. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the last little sort of newer or current, I should say, design trends, which is a very good one. There's some areas of Tampa we're going to discuss where I think some of our clients could really use your service. We'll be back in just a minute. Curious what your Tampa home is worth? Here's an easy way to find out what homes like yours are selling for in today's market. Text the word value to 813-377-2775 for a free report on Tampa house prices. We'll send you a free report with up-to-the-minute statistics based on all homes for sale sold in your neighborhood over the last 6 months in all price ranges. To get your free report on Tampa Bay house prices, just call or text the word value to 813-377-2775.
You're buying a house. Congratulations. So while you're worrying about the paperwork, leave the moving part to us. We're Woody & Sons Moving Company, a Florida licensed and insured mover, and we offer same-day written estimates. Plus, no sneaky mileage, stairs, or additional stop fees. All we ask is that you check out our great ratings on Google and Angie's List, then go to woodyandsons.com to learn more. Whether you need a full-service pack and move or some extra hands, at Woody & Sons Moving Company, we move you.
Hi, this is Melissa Rogers, owner of SEC Inspection Services, where we offer full inspections and insurance inspections. Give us a call at 727-786-4663 or visit us on the web at secinspection.com.
Welcome back. Thanks so much for rejoining us here today on Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, and you are listening to us on the Real Estate Radio Network. In studio today, we have Kelli Ogboke. keeps looking at you because every time I just want to make sure I get it right. And the topic of today's show is current design trends and project management. Fabulous show we've had today, talking about some of the changes you can make if you don't love where you live. We'll fix it if you want to move. If you don't, you can call Kelly. So we are going to give you our off-air number in case you would love to connect with her. Or she's talked about something that kind of chimes in and it speaks to your heart and you feel like she could bring you value. We'd love for you to connect with her. 813-377-2775. Again, this is your host, Katrina Madewell. You can reach us here on Tampa Home Talk, and we'll be happy to connect with Kelly or any of our guests. 813-377-2775. And fabulous show we've had today. So if you missed any part of it, make sure you catch it on a podcast at tampahometalk.com or any podcast player. Just search for Tampa Home Talk. So the last one, you have another little design trend. We list 3. So the first one was the tropical modern, the transitional, and then the last one
is actually historical preservation. So I don't know if I can necessarily call it a trend because people have been doing it for a long time.
But we've seen some areas, like for example, Seminole Heights is one that's still in that stage.
Heights, yep, and Hyde Park.
Hyde Park, of course, which that started a long time ago, but I'm sure there's still some of that there. West Tampa be another one that's coming up next.
Absolutely.
So you have these 1927 bungalows, right?
Yep.
Is what is.
Yep, I've got one right now, 1920 bungalow, and it's in Hyde Park. And absolute disaster to start with. But what's really exciting and what really gets me really going
over the moon, right?
Over the moon is when someone, homeowner really looks at something that looks terrible and says, I see the vision, but I don't know exactly how to, capitalize on that. And so they call me up, and because they've called me, that they're like ready and they're invested to go for it and really make it everything it can be and find its true potential and really bring it back to life and make it even better than before, but still respect, what it was and make sure that it, fits all the guidelines, but also just creates a livable space now, a space that you love now.
And in some of those areas, they're really strict about protecting and preservation, what you can do and what you can't do. And then you have the other whole flip side of that with regards to insurance, where you can't have knob and tube electrical.
Exactly.
Right? So, I mean, I imagine you run into that.
Right, yeah. There's a lot that goes into it, for sure. And there are a lot of hoops to jump through. And so that's part of the project management that we do is, kind of walking you through the process and helping you and, making those applications for you and doing as much as we can to expedite the process and to not, miss the deadlines, because it is on a deadline basis.
So let's say it's something like that. And I know Sulphur Springs is another area that's a transition. We'll see a lot of them in Tampa over the years around the river and that kind of stuff. But let's say it is this, bungalow. Maybe somebody picks it up for $50,000 because it really is a dumper. Okay. And they're seeing this house that the end vision is probably a $200,000 or $300,000 bungalow, which everybody's seen it, right? In Southern Living or Better Homes and Gardens, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. What does something like that run? I know it depends on what they put into it, obviously, but could you give the person listening a range on what something like your services would cost to make it that?
For my services, for something like that, I would say it's probably going to run around $10,000 to $12,000. But that's just going to depend on, it would be an hourly, we'd come up with a not to exceed and that type of thing, but I'd say it would be around that because of just how much time it would take and the investment, and a lot of that would be the project management, making sure that we've got all the industries together, organizing the whole process.
But that's a drop in the bucket compared to what the end result is, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And it could go up from there for sure, but it's something, it's all going to depend on what your needs are and how much help you really do need and how many architectural review boards we need to go through. And
how does that work? Like when we're like the example that we're talking about now, the historical preservation with the bungalow. How many of those do you have? Like, what could somebody like me expect?
Well, it's very, especially in Hyde Park, it's very spelled out. There's lots of resources, and the ARC are very, very helpful. They give you everything you need, and it's just you do need to meet the deadlines in order. And there's public hearings, and you have certain things that you have to go through, and putting up notice for your neighbors and getting permission and.
Which is interesting because it's not a deed-restricted community.
No.
Yet it's an area-restricted community, I guess is a better way to put it.
But, it can just spell, and people can say, oh, it's such a headache, and is it really worthwhile and stuff. But when you really go through and you look at, Hyde Park is what it is because it's been preserved, and those areas become, higher value
More
neighborhoods
valuable.
because they're preserved and because of those rules that, it's a...
Yes. The funny part is, because I was born and raised here in Tampa. So when I grew up, Hyde Park really was the ghetto. I mean, it really was a bad
my
neighborhood.
grandmother lived there.
So and now it's beautiful. I mean, you walk through, there's so much character and charm there. And I think that's the big picture of the Architectural Review Committee is they want to keep that character and charm and not build this super contemporary modern house in the middle of all the preserved stuff.
Right. You want to be able to stroll down that street and really feel how it may have felt at one point, but also, it's about what it could have been and preserving that, but also it's giving it a new generation of, people that dwell there and making it a place that they love to live.
We've seen a lot of these, especially in Seminole Heights. I guess because it's still really an area that's transitioning.
Right.
But we see a lot of those bungalows that were just really run down, like just absolutely run to the ground. Like everything has to be upgraded. The paint's chipping off. I mean, you name it. And then when you look at some of these things, when they're redone, it's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing.
And they've essentially been rebuilt. You know what I mean? Like we are doing a 1905 Spanish Mediterranean house, and we're doing an addition 2 stories on either side, and so it's going out. So in the process, I mean, it's still in construction at the moment, but in the process, we've essentially rebuilt to the perimeter walls, and it's a really good thing we did because when we opened up that plaster, it was very little holding it together.
Wow.
So we've extended the life of this beautiful, charming, house by adding on to it. So it has a new generation of memories and spaces and things to enjoy, but it's also preserved that original building that, had we not done this addition, may have not lasted that much longer.
Yeah.
It would have continued to kind of fall apart.
Now, what area was that in?
It's in South Tampa, on Granada.
Okay.
I don't know what the name.
Yeah, you have the South Tampa, and then you have the South Tampa, right? That whole area south of Gandy that's also revamping.
Yeah.
So you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We're going to take a very quick break again. And when we come back in just a minute, we're going to talk about what were some of your most favorite projects that you've ever done. And then we're going to also get into the top 5 frequently asked questions that you get on a daily basis. Fair enough?
Yep.
We're here with Kelli Ogboke, and you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to Tampa Home Talk. We've saved the best part of the show for last. If you missed any part of today's show, please catch it on our website at tampahometalk.com. And we are also on Facebook and Twitter at Tampa Home Talk. Today's theme and show is all about current design and trends and project management, and one of our missions, which is love where you live or we'll fix it. So we're proud to have you on as a guest for the people that want to keep their home and stay in it and still want to love where they live. Kelli Ogboke, and she has done a fabulous job. Looking at her portfolio here, her portfolio in her pocket, the design management and trends. We talked a little bit about that in the earlier part of the show, the tropical modern, the transitional, and then we even talked about the historical preservation. Interesting topics, all of those. We could probably continue forever. So, and I know I love to ask you guys, like, what are your top 5 questions that you get and that type of thing. And I love to share stories. So what are some of your most funnest, favorite projects that you've done? Like, what type of stuff did you do?
Okay, so probably my favorite project I'm actually working on at the moment, and it's actually for Grace Family Church in Lutz, their new campus. And it's my favorite so far. We're getting very close to finishing, but because we've essentially taken a large 50,000 square foot warehouse and turning it into a church space, but it's very different from any, church you've ever done. And they essentially, kind of threw up the hands and said, let's do something, very different. Let's throw out all the rules, we've got essentially a Starbucks in,
We go to Grace, so I know.
Oh,
yeah,
you do?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I get it. I have to totally admit it because Sundays are only day off. So sometimes it's a great match for us because we can literally watch the service via video.
Yeah,
it's,
I hear
it is what it is. But I can't wait to see it. So now I'm going to have to really go to church.
Well, it's a Waters Avenue campus. So it's great. I mean, the whole church in general, all the pastors and the staff and everybody that we've worked with have been fantastic. And I think that's also added to why we love it so much. This whole project has been great. I've been working with MPAD Architecture and Design, and that whole team, again, another woman-owned business that does really great work. And that's who we partner with on a lot of our large commercial projects. Because it just expands our resources, and they're fantastic. Anyway, so we've been working with them on this project, so that's made it really fun and a great collaboration. And, you know, doing this new space, it's exciting, and we get to throw out all these rules, and we just start, you know, right out of the 50,000 square foot box. And, you know, we needed to raise the ceiling, so we only had 15 feet of ceiling, so we needed 27. So instead of, you know, raising the ceiling, we dropped a completely, you know, self-contained metal building in the middle of this warehouse. And so again, you know, just breaking these rules and not even, you know, obviously the rules we follow are the code.
Right.
When I say that, but all the other
yeah.
things, all the preconceptions of what a church is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to operate, all that went out the window. And it's just been...
What was the vision there behind the change?
Just, you know, trying to just keep it relevant, you know, and
yes.
like I was saying earlier with, you know, creating the gathering spaces and, you know, like the lobby, you know, Pastor Craig was actually, you know, was like, I want the lobby bigger. And I'm really glad we did. We pushed to make it bigger and bigger because it's about creating that, you know, the gathering space, just like we said in residential and in schools, you know, creating a place where people can come and feel like they have a community and a space where they can meet other people. And that's why there's a coffee shop and, you know, a little bookstore and places to sit. And we've got great furniture and, you know, just really making it a comfortable place where you can come and you want to hang out. You know, you don't just show up and
let me get out of here,
do your thing, and then you're just out the door and, you know, sitting in traffic, you know, like hang around a little, make some friends, make some relationships. And, you know, so a lot of the principles that go into retail design or office space or schools or
churches,
you know, hospitality works for church too, you know, it's like, it's not just, you can't really segment it and say, okay, well, there's only these rules for this type of, you know, environment. And, you know, like they're kind of all just kind of melding together. You know, you can use that whole, you know, the kitchen is the heart of the home. And you could say, okay, well, the coffee shop's going to be the heart of the church.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where everybody's going to gather on this coffee shop and they're going to hold their coffee and that's where they're going to make their connections. And so, I mean, there's a lot of those type of things that just kind of go across. And so as far as like my favorite, you know, I've had a lot of really great projects, but this one, it's just been, you know, extra special, and extra fun, and it's not done yet. So we're in that project management phase at the moment. You know? So
what's the timeline like from beginning to end on something like that?
Well, today we received, and I got a call right before I came in. Our temporary certificate of occupancy, so they can have the first service. It is nowhere close to finished, you know, as far as all the details. You know, like many projects that we have to do it in phases for timeline and budget and everything like that. So we're thinking maybe like September, October for like a big blowout grand opening, when we're hoping to have every detail.
And so when you back up, like what's the beginning timeline for that as far as starting?
Okay. Well, we started design in November, broke ground in January. And so we'll be complete at least by September.
So it's like a year.
Yeah, a year turnaround, which is, I mean, for 50,000 square feet, it's
a lot. That's a lot
to do.
Yeah.
It's a lot to do.
So what are some of the things that go into that? Like, where do you start with that other than obviously a consultation? Like, is there processes with you guys and steps that you have to?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of meeting with all the different department heads and really talking about, you know, the children's ministries and the, you know, the every kind of the children's areas, you know, so you're talking to the people about, you know, okay, the teachers and that whole process and the check-in process and the security of, you know, the kids and, you know, only certain people can be back there. Obviously, you know, working with the kids, they've got to go through background checks. So it's not just open for anybody to come and go.
Right.
And so there's design, you know, we have a secure hallway. So that, you know, goes into the design. So there's all the programming phase. So it's essentially, you know, finding all your needs and wants and desires. And so there's like the practical point where you're finding how many spaces do you need?
I mean, what I'm hearing, Kelly, is you guys take every single little aspect and space and place of that building and really think it through.
Yep. And it's more, I like to say it's more from like an inside out. So it's talking about, okay, so what activities are happening, not necessarily how many particular rooms you need. It's more like how many activities are happening.
What's going on now? What's the plan to go on?
So it's like, you know, where do you need spaces for gathering, for meetings, for, you know, for ushers, for the behind the scenes, for the people doing the sound, you know, like
what spaces and places do you need before we start?
Right. So yeah, what's actually happening in these spaces, and when is there an overlap? When do you actually, you know what I mean, like different scheduling and things like that. So it's the programming phase where we determine what you need to happen, and then we work from there into, okay, how much space do you need, and does it need a special location? Does it need a certain number of storage? Does it need, you know, how many things need to be in there? How many people need to be in there? When is it there? Is it used for multiple purposes? Do you clear out that room, you know, that's a kid's room on a Sunday, but on a Wednesday it's an adult classroom, you know, like, so
and how to make that
put all those
space
kids
both.
Stuff? Exactly.
Right.
And how do you design that to where it's not awkward for an adult? And
sitting in a little tiny kid chair.
Exactly. You know,
you can tell, like when we do an open house or something at kids' school, like we're sitting in the kids' desk and we're like, really, I don't think we fit in here. We'll sit here anyway, and hopefully we don't break the chair. Exactly. So that kind of stuff.
Yes, and I mean, like, that's not comfortable. Nobody wants to sit in a little chair. I mean, you know, there's all
get
those
me out of
things.
here.
Yeah, and then where are you going to store the chairs that you have to swap over? You know, so there's a lot of that front end programming and planning that takes place before you even start to draw anything or get those big ideas. And then you talk about style, and you know, because Grace Family has a Van Dyke campus, you know, has a particular style. So
yes,
we didn't necessarily want to replicate that, but we still wanted it to feel like you're in the same place. So it still feels that same general feel without replicating it down to every detail, but also, you know, taking it to the next, you know, kind of, I guess, that next generation, you know, and as it kind of evolves, you know, so you got to kind of keep keeping up with it, you know.
Yeah, I tell you, go to that church and you're like, this is not how you imagine church. But the core foundation and the core mission and the core values and teachings are still there.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that, I think that, no wonder that's your favorite project, because it really talks about exactly what you do. Like, this is the space here, you know, this is the norm, but this is what we want, and here's what we have, and how can we make it better and different?
Exactly. And another reason, and I'm glad you brought that up, is that it really is the core of, you know, also, it just, there's something symbolic too about taking because I didn't even mention that this warehouse is just like fallen apart itself, 50,000 square feet. It's just like, it's old and it was dirty. I mean, it's beautiful now, but it was, you know, this is
what we got. Let's
right.
fix it.
You know, like, you're looking at it going, what are you thinking? And, you know, taking something that people want to they're looking at it going, are you sure? You know, let's look for something else. Let's keep going and going. No, with a little bit of TLC and some time and some investment.
And some love.
This thing can be amazing, and it can be better than it ever was before, and better than even starting from scratch and designing a new building, because this thing has some history. You know, it has come back from, you know, essentially being abandoned, and it was.
What was it before?
It was like an old distribution center that hadn't sold for a long, long time, so it's sat empty.
But those are the good things, because when you get a deal on it, again, you make it fabulous. I mean, that's the whole point behind it.
That's the whole thing.
That's where the value proposition is in your service. I mean, that's really where it is.
Right. You know,
because a lot of people can't see that.
Exactly.
I mean, we have this conversation all the time. For home sellers, you have to stage it. You got to make it look right, because chances are 8 out of 10 people that are going to come through your property are not going to have that end vision in mind, and that's what you do.
Right.
You fill in the gap for that 80% that can't.
Exactly. And that's why, I mean, we even do services for, you know, people that are looking seriously about a building and they're not even sure if they want to sign on the dotted line. And then we'll just do like a schematic visualization of what it could look like. And I mean, like, that will make people sign on the dotted line immediately, because they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think that it could get that beautiful, or that it could really take on that new life. And then that kind of puts them over the line to wanting to go ahead and buy the property. You know, so even doing stuff like that, to kind of help them out to make the decision. And then,
I think people want to be sure,
Exactly.
With any real estate, whether it's your home you live in, your place of work, whatever you're doing, it's most people's biggest asset. It's their biggest liability, and it's going to probably be their biggest monthly payment unless they're paying cash. And so I'm sure that they want to be certain that it's going to be good. And that's interesting. Right. So do you have software that you actually like design some of the stuff out so they can kind of have a pre-look?
Yep. We use Revit Architecture, which is a AutoCAD in 3D. So you can build it in 3D as you're building it in 2D. So your traditional CAD would just be the line drawings. So as you're doing the line drawings, you're building it in 3D. And then render it in what we call 3ds Max, which is just a rendering engine. And there's others out there now that are probably even more sophisticated, but it works for us.
So you can literally move walls around in your little sketch, and it's a quick thing, and it's interesting.
Drop a camera in there, spin it around, look around at your space. Oh, it helps tremendously. You actually start to see where things could, where you have design opportunities that you wouldn't have noticed if you were just looking at it as a floor plan.
Technology today is so amazing. Like it allows people, super, super creative people like you to really just blossom and flourish and show up.
Right. And it's great because you can, then it's exciting when you make this beautiful picture in 3D, and then after, when it's actually finished, some things will evolve and change as it goes through the process of the build out. But when you get to go, okay, well, this was the idea and the concept, and this is the end result, and look how close they are, and even, better in the end result. And, it helps. It also puts clients at ease too, so they can go, okay, now I can see it.
I see it. I can see the vision.
Yeah, you were talking about knocking down that wall. I couldn't, because it's really hard. I know it's hard. I mean, I can see through that wall and see it open and big, but even sometimes I'm surprised, how great it feels when you open a space up or, change that outdoor facade or add that little detail. We have to
see it and feel it and just, really be in tune with it. And that's the whole purpose of changing the of changing the space. So I know I asked you what were some of your top frequently asked questions that you get. So what's your number one?
Well, the two top one is how much and how long. So it's like, how much is this going to cost? Give me a ballpark. And the problem with ballparks is that they're always wrong. You're never actually right.
Well, it's a guess. It's your best guess.
It is a guess, but the thing that's more important before that is just understanding a client's budget, and then what their expectations for what they're going to get in that budget. So if we can nail that down first before we really start throwing out ballparks of what this and that's going to cost, then we got to make sure that we've got our expectations, because a lot of it comes down to realistic expectations. If you have really unrealistic expectations for what you can get for your budget, we're going to have a lot of problems because there's going to be a lot of disappointments, and we're going to work really hard at something that we may not be able to do because we had really unrealistic.
Well, you have this vision, but you don't have enough money to complete that vision.
Exactly. And then, you don't want to get halfway through or have designed this whole new dream home and then realize that you're so far off, from what you...
Scrap the project, we're selling it.
Exactly. Call Katrina. We got to list this thing. Budget is a very important thing to talk about right off the bat, but it's also, the ballparking is just it's a minefield to try to go, okay, well, that's going to cost that. And what I like to do is I like to, get that idea of, so we're on the same page as far as expectations and a budget, but then, getting a contractor or subcontractors involved early for them to do the ballparks more than me, because, they're going to be able to really get the more detailed numbers and give you more of a realistic idea of how much it's going to cost to do these different things. I can give some idea, and a lot of times I can be close, but other times, I can be way far off too, because, a contractor is going to know, he's going to have a finger on a pulse of, how much drywall has gone up in 2014. It went up 20% this year. So it's like my idea of how much it would be to drywall your house.
Well, metals and that kind of stuff can change very significantly from 1 year or 1 month to the next.
Exactly. So, as far as that's one big question. Then the other one is timeline. It's how long is this going to take? And the thing with construction that people always say is it's always going to cost more and take longer. But again, this comes down to setting realistic expectations. If you want it done in 6 weeks, we should probably plan that it's not going to, it may be close in 6 weeks, but it's going to need several more weeks to kind of finish out those details.
Plan on 8 or 10 or 12
8 or 10 or 12. I would say 12, because before you're really finished, because you've got different things, and little things could hold you up. The plumber may not be able to come out, so then that keeps you from installing your cabinets, and that keeps you from templating your countertops, and so that keeps you from your backsplash.
Well, plus, if you get done early, no one's ever disappointed about doing something early that they're excited.
Yes, so that's
but if you have to make them wait, it's worse.
Exactly. Let's underpromise and overdeliver. So,
and just like in our business, there's a lot of things we just cannot control. Like, we can't control how fast the mortgage company and the underwriters are moving. We're going to try. Mm-hmm. We're going to push them as much as we can, but realistically,
right, I can't go build your cabinets any faster. I can't, turn a wrench for the plumber. I could try, but you probably don't want me to.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't template your countertops any faster. You know what I mean? Like, I can push and I can I can
organize it.
I can do as much as I can, but if it rains and so that person can't paint outside, I can't control that. So there are a lot of things that just we like to set realistic expectations for both the money and the timeline, because otherwise you're just in for trouble. You don't want to. You don't exactly like you're saying. You don't want to tell somebody 6 weeks and then have them wait. You really want to get it done, and so it's just a learning process. For both. Every project's different, and every client is different, and you just have to set those expectations and hope for the best.
So what's your final thought and your frequently asked question that someone would need to know before they ever start this process?
Okay, well, the other question that I think I get asked a lot is, can I keep this? And it's, it's holding something that they don't want to part with in their home, that they want to. It's like, can I keep this? It's no. It's either a memento or, some sort of thing that they're attached to. And sometimes people will start out and say, oh, I definitely have to keep this. And through the process, maybe they change their mind.
Right.
They see something else and they realize, actually, that probably doesn't go with the direction we're going. I never want to be the one to say that. If I
let them figure it out on their own.
Yeah, we'll guide you to that conclusion. But that being said, your home needs to be a place where you love. And so if there's something that you love having around you, you love seeing all the time, you love that memory that's attached to it, then why try to remove that? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's about essentially creating the space you love to be in. So if it's something you want to have around all the time, then we will make it work, and it'll be fabulous because it's yours and it's your home.
I can't think of a better way to end our show. And love where you live, or we'll fix it. And if you want to change that space you live in, we're going to have Kelli fix it. Thank you so much for chiming in today and listening for our show. If you missed any part of it, please catch our show in its entirety at TampaHometalk.com and also on a podcast. You can reach us on our off-air number, where we'd be happy to connect you with Kelli. 813-377-2775. Again, this is your host, Katrina Madewell, for Tampa Home Talk on the Real Estate Radio Network. You can catch us at 813-377-2775. Facebook and Twitter across the web at Tampa Home Talk. Thank you so much. This is going to conclude today's show. We are out.
'Cause it's a long, long way from home. There's no reason to